Hello everyone, we are the Trinitas Group, and in this presentation, we are going to delve into the security policies, laws, and computer crime investigations of Airbnb, exploring the measures implemented by Airbnb to protect users' data and assets. Moreover, it examines the legal framework surrounding Airbnb and the role of law enforcement agencies in investigating computer crimes within the Airbnb context. And here's the content overview. The first section is the security policies, and under the security policy, we have the community policy and the security policies to balance the host safety and the guest privacy. The second section is the discussion about the laws and regulation for Airbnb security, and under that, we'll be discussing the overview of the legal framework, laws and regulations relevant to Airbnb, and the legalities surrounding Airbnb that the host and guest need to know. And the third section is the computer crime investigations, and under that, we're going to discuss what are the computer crimes, what is computer crime investigation, what is law enforcement, and how does Airbnb collaborate with law enforcement agencies in computer crime investigations. So what are security policies? In the context of Airbnb, security policies refer to the guidelines and procedures that Airbnb has established to ensure the safety and privacy of its host and guests. When booking a cozy home or an expensive apartment on Airbnb, there are cases where the guests often don't think about the security measures that go into protecting their personal information and ensuring a safe and worthy experience. However, behind the scenes, Airbnb has implemented security policies to protect its users and maintain trust within its community. Airbnb has a policy that prohibits intentionally concealed recording devices such as hidden security cameras. This policy is a crucial part of Airbnb's commitment to user privacy. This means that the hosts are not allowed to install surveillance devices in private spaces such as bedrooms and bathrooms without disclosing them to the guests. Security cameras or recording devices that are in or observe private spaces like bedrooms, bathrooms, or sleeping areas are not allowed. This policy emphasizes that hidden security devices are always prohibited even if they are disclosed in advance. This policy helps ensure that guests can feel safe and maintain their privacy while using Airbnb. Hosts must indicate the presence of all security cameras or other recording devices in or around a listing, even if it's not turned on or hooked up. This policy is to ensure transparency and trust between the host and the guests. Next policy is undisclosed security cameras or other recording devices are never permitted. This security policy reinforces Airbnb's commitment to privacy and trust. And the last security policy is hosts must always disclose if an active recording is taking place. This is to ensure that guests are aware of any surveillance during their stay. Now, let's move on to the community policy. There are respective community policies set by Airbnb to ensure the security, safety, and well-being of both hosts and guests. Airbnb's Help Center provides detailed information about Airbnb community policies for ensuring safe stays, experiences, and interactions. They cover a range of scenarios including what is allowed and what is not allowed during a stay or experience. Here's what Airbnb allows. First is the self-defense. If a guest or host is physically attacked during a stay or experience, they are allowed to defend themselves with proportionate force until the danger has ceased. Aside from that, Airbnb also allows permitted weapons. Guests may bring legally owned weapons or non-lethal weapons only if they are safely secured and disclosed to the host before arrival. Hosts may keep legally owned weapons in their accommodation provided that they are safely secured. Weapons must also be disclosed if they are located in plain sight or in a way that is discoverable by guests. Now, let's jump straight to what Airbnb doesn't allow. First on the list are the threats or abuse. Threats, violence, or abuse towards others, including intimate partners, children, animals, and ill or disabled people, are not allowed. Next is sexual assault and misconduct. Any form of sexual assault and misconduct is prohibited. Next is dangerous or illegal animals. Any animal whose breed or species is illegal to own in the location of the listing or experience is not allowed. Next is explosive devices. Incendiary devices or assault weapons are not allowed. These items are never allowed at a stay or experience even if it's legal to have them in the area. And then the last one are the uncensored or undisclosed weapons. Any legally owned weapons must be properly disclosed and safely secured. Now, let's discuss the security policies to balance the host's safety and the guest's privacy. Airbnb has established policies to balance the security of hosts and privacy of guests. Here are some key points. First is the prohibited devices. As mentioned earlier, hidden security devices are always prohibited even if they're disclosed in advance. Security cameras and other recording devices are never allowed in bedrooms or bathrooms. Next is disclosure. All security cameras and other recording devices located in or around listings must be disclosed in the listings house rules. So in the context of Airbnb, a listing refers to the accommodation. This could be a home, an apartment, or a single room, or experience that a host has posted on the platform for guests to reserve. So basically, it is like the amenities of the services being offered. Additionally, when we say house rules, these are the guidelines set by the host for guests to follow during their stay, which ensures that guests are aware of the rules before they confirm their reservation. Next is the cancellation and refund. If a host discloses the device after the booking is made, Airbnb will support the guest in canceling the reservation and receiving a full refund. Next is the legitimate reasons for security devices. Hosts may have legitimate reasons for using security devices such as video doorbells to help guests enter the listing or security cameras to protect their homes when they aren't at home. Next is the trust building. By requiring hosts to disclose cameras in advance, guests can decide whether they are comfortable selecting the listing or prefer to choose a different listing. And the last one is the continuous improvement. While incidents involving security cameras are rare, Airbnb is committed to strengthening in-product communication so that expectations for both host and guest are aligned. These policies are designed to promote trust and safety within the Airbnb community. They ensure that guests are aware of any surveillance devices and the security measures accustomed to their accommodation, allowing them to make informed decisions about their stay. Now, let's jump straight to the second section, which is the laws and regulations for Airbnb security. Airbnb is also a subject to various laws and regulations that govern its operations and protect both hosts and guests. These laws play a crucial role in ensuring the privacy, safety, and fairness of transactions that take place on the platform. Here, let's just have an overview of the legal framework that are significant to Airbnb. First is the national and international laws affecting Airbnb security. Airbnb operates in many countries around the world, and thus it is a subject to a range of national and international laws that impact its security practices. These laws include data protection legislation, consumer protection regulation, and laws governing online marketplaces. This means that the compliance with these legal frameworks is essential for Airbnb to maintain the trust and confidence of its users while operating within the boundaries of the law. Next is the data protection and privacy regulations. Data privacy and privacy regulations play a vital role in ensuring that Airbnb handles personal information safely and responsibly. Laws such as the General Data Protection Regulation or the GDPR on the European Union and the California Consumer Privacy Act or CCPA in the United States require Airbnb to implement specific security measures and obtain user consent for data processing and sharing. Then the liability and responsibility in the Airbnb context. Determining liability and responsibility in the Airbnb context can be complex due to the nature of the platform's operation. Laws and regulations often outline the obligations of both hosts and guests, ensuring that they act responsibly, adhere to safety standards, and respect each other's rights. Hence, understanding these legal frameworks helps protect both host and guest and set clear guidelines for resolving disputes effectively. So, what do hosts and guests need to know about the legalities surrounding this innovative platform? The laws and regulations governing Airbnb vary widely from one location to another as they are determined by local governments and authorities. Meaning, Airbnb operates in many different locations worldwide, and each location has its own set of laws and regulations. There are 8 key points about Airbnb laws and regulations. The first aspect we'll tackle is understanding local laws. It is crucial for both hosts and guests using Airbnb to be aware of the specific laws and regulations imposed by their respective cities or countries regarding short-term rentals or home sharing. So, when deciding whether to become an Airbnb host, it's important to understand how the laws work in your city. Some cities have laws that restrict your ability to host paying guests for short periods. These laws are often part of a city's zoning or administrative code. Different jurisdictions indeed have varying restrictions on Airbnb and other short-term rentals. Here are some examples. First is the duration limits. Some cities limit the number of days a property can be rented out per year. Just like in New South Wales, stays are limited to 180 total days per year and no more than 3 consecutive months. And in North America, a business license may be required for any property rented out for more than 90 days in a year. And for the licensing requirements, depending on the jurisdiction, hosts may need to register their property as a business, obtain a special permit, or acquire certain licenses. For example, in Philadelphia, individuals renting out their homes for any amount of time must apply for a limited lodging operator and commercial activity licenses before they can host guests through Airbnb. Now, the second key point, registration, permits, and licenses. Many cities now require hosts to obtain certain licenses or permits before listing their properties on platforms like Airbnb. Meaning, in many cities, you must register, get a permit, or obtain a license before you list your property or accept guests. Certain types of short-term bookings may be prohibited altogether. Local governments vary greatly in how they enforce these laws, wherein penalties may include fines or other enforcement. Then the taxes. Taxes are an inevitable facet of any business venture. Many jurisdictions require hosts to collect a tax for each overnight stay and pay that tax to the city or other jurisdiction. In certain jurisdictions, Airbnb collects and remits these taxes on behalf of the hosts. Next is the landlord-tenant laws. When hosting longer stays, you may be subject to landlord-tenant laws that vary by jurisdiction and may impose more legal obligations on you and provide guests with certain additional legal rights. Next is the building and housing standards. Most local governments and many jurisdictions have rules and regulations specifying minimum construction, design, and maintenance standards for buildings, including regulations on habitability, health, and safety. Another crucial aspect when operating an Airbnb are business licenses and business insurance. Many jurisdictions require owners or operators of certain businesses to apply for and obtain a license before the business can be operated. Both host and guest must understand the implications for liability, property damage, or injuries that may occur during the stay. The zoning rules. Zoning rules dictate how a property can be used. Most cities or other local jurisdictions have laws that set out the way you can use your home. These rules are often found in a zoning code, planning code, or city ordinances. So basically, this means that hosts must ensure that their listing is consistent with current zoning requirements or use definitions. And the last key aspect is special permit. Some jurisdictions may require a special permit to rent out your home. In certain jurisdictions, hosts of Airbnb experiences may be required to register their experiences as a business with the local government and at the national or regional level. These laws and regulations are designed to protect guests and maintain quality of accommodations and prevent conflicts with residents. And here's a note from Airbnb reminding us to always refer to the most recent and localized information from Airbnb and relevant local authorities, as the regulations can change and they can vary significantly from one jurisdiction to another. This note primarily means that hosts need to understand and comply with these laws to avoid legal issues. However, it is crucial for hosts and guests to stay informed about the specific regulation in their area and regularly check for updates or changes in local laws. Now, the third and last section is the computer crime investigation. But first, let's discuss what are computer crimes. Computer crimes, often referred to as cybercrimes, are offenses committed using digital technology. These crimes can range from the theft of sensitive data to unauthorized access to computer systems. Types of computer crimes include hacking, identity theft, phishing, and malware attacks. In the context of Airbnb, computer crime poses a significant threat to the security of Airbnb's platform and its users. Cybercriminals may attempt to gain access to personal information, manipulate bookings, or scam unsuspecting guests and hosts. So, understanding the potential risk and impact of computer crime is crucial for Airbnb to develop effective security measures and protect its community. Now, let's discuss what is computer crime investigation. Computer crime investigation is the process of investigating, analyzing, and recovering forensic data for digital evidence of a crime. In the context of Airbnb, a computer crime investigation would involve examining digital evidence related to potential illegal activities that occur on the platform. Here are the general procedures for computer crime investigations. First is detection. The first step in a computer crime investigation is often detecting that a crime has occurred. Airbnb has systems in place to monitor for suspicious activity and detect potential cybercrimes. Next step is the investigation. Once a potential crime has been detected, Airbnb security team would begin an investigation. This could involve analyzing user data, transaction records, and other digital evidence to understand the nature and extent of the crime. Then the third step is cooperation with law enforcement. If the investigation reveals evidence of a crime, Airbnb would cooperate with law enforcement agencies to further investigate and resolve the issue. This could involve sharing relevant data with law enforcement, but of course in accordance with Airbnb's data disclosure policy, assisting with the interpretation of digital evidence or providing expert testimony in court. And the last step is the resolution and follow-up. After the crime has been resolved, Airbnb would take steps to mitigate any harm to affected users and to prevent similar crimes from occurring in the future. This could involve securing compromised accounts, improving security measures, or educating users about how to protect themselves from cybercrime. What is law enforcement? In the context of Airbnb, law enforcement refers to the policies and procedures that Airbnb has in place to cooperate with law enforcement agencies worldwide. This includes responding to valid legal requests for information about Airbnb users. Airbnb takes cybercrime very seriously. They have a dedicated team that responds to data requests from law enforcement. This means that if there's any suspicion of illegal activities such as fraud or hacking, Airbnb will cooperate with law enforcement agencies to investigate and resolve the issue. How does Airbnb collaborate with law enforcement agencies in computer crime investigations? Airbnb recognizes the importance of collaboration with law enforcement agencies in investigating and resolving computer crimes. This platform maintains open channels of communication and actively cooperates with authorities when incidents occur. And as I mentioned earlier, when it comes to fighting computer crimes, Airbnb and the law enforcement agencies exchange information and coordinate efforts. This collaboration involves sharing relevant information, providing access to necessary data, and working together to identify and apprehend individuals involved in such illegal activities. Therefore, establishing strong partnerships and sharing information between Airbnb and law enforcement agencies is crucial for effective security. It's all about creating a united front against cybercrime. Hence, by working together, they can share insights, strategies, and intelligence to stay one step ahead of the hackers. The law enforcement team. Airbnb has a dedicated team that corresponds to data requests from law enforcement. They provide data to law enforcement agencies and their agents following their data disclosure policy. There are 4 key points in processing law enforcement requests. The first key point is the law enforcement portal. Airbnb has launched an online portal specifically for law enforcement. This portal provides a secure and streamlined channel for law enforcement to submit a valid legal request for information from Airbnb. Law enforcement teams can track requests, receive status updates, and get customized email notifications through the portal. This primarily means that law enforcement officers can securely submit valid legal requests for information, track their request, and receive status updates through the use of this portal. Additionally, Airbnb provided general procedures in filing a law enforcement request through the Airbnb law enforcement portal. First is to register to law enforcement portal. All law enforcement entities that seek information about users of the Airbnb platform should register with the Airbnb law enforcement portal. After that, Law enforcement entities may then submit a law enforcement request directly through the Airbnb law enforcement portal. They also noted that law enforcement officials who do not submit law enforcement requests through the portal should expect longer response times. The second key point is the request evaluation. All requests for user information are handled and evaluated in line with Airbnb's existing terms of service, privacy policy, and law enforcement guidelines. Airbnb is unable to process overly broad and vague law enforcement requests or requests that do not comply with applicable laws. The third key point is the user privacy. To protect the privacy of its user, Airbnb will only disclose user information when they receive a valid legal request or in emergency situations. And as mentioned earlier, all requests for user information are evaluated in accordance with Airbnb's existing terms of service, privacy policy, and law enforcement guidelines, meaning processing law enforcement requests strictly complies with Airbnb's policy, which is to provide notice to users when they receive legal proceedings from a third party seeking their information such as law enforcement. However, there are cases that sending notifications to the users will depend on certain situations. If they believe that sending notifications will be futile, ineffective, or will create potential risks, or if they are legally prohibited from providing notice to the affected user. And the last key point is the transparency report. The Law Enforcement Transparency Report is a document that Airbnb has been publishing annually since 2016. The purpose of this report is to provide insights into the frequency of requests for user information, where they came from, and how they respond to them. Airbnb Law Enforcement Transparency Report provides insights into the following aspects. The first one is the frequency of requests. The report details how often Airbnb receives requests for user information from the law enforcement agencies. Then the next one is the source of requests. This aspect provides information about where these requests are coming from. Then the last one is the response to requests. The transparency report also outlines how Airbnb responds to these requests. This includes whether they provided the requested information, and if not, then the reasons for refusing. In conclusion, the purpose of this transparency report is to keep the public informed about Airbnb's practices and policies regarding user data and privacy. It demonstrates Airbnb's commitment to user privacy and transparency, and help users understand how their information might be shared with law enforcement agencies. Here are the references used